I think that fundamentally, life is about curiosity, about questioning the way things are today in order to make the future be brighter for tomorrow.
Something that has only been made possible in the imaginations of science fiction writers is now seeming closer to reality than ever. Half a century since the first humans went to the moon, a number of different organisations are now hoping to make the first trip to the Red Planet. Ryan, a PhD student studying astronomy at Cambridge University, has been shortlisted by the Mars One company, which aims to make this trip in 2031.
As far as I can remember, astronomy and space has been an integral part of what I've been interested in. I can't actually remember ever not being interested in space. I remember when I was growing up being provided books on space and astronomy. But in the case of Mars, there were photographs from the surface of Mars, and seeing photographs from a spacecraft that had been sent to the surface of another world, and then seeing that it didn't look that dissimilar from places here on the Earth, like a desert environment. That made these places real in my mind. The beautiful connection of looking up at the nighttime sky, seeing Mars as just a pale dot in the sky, and then seeing a photograph from the surface and realising that's a destination. It's a place that people, and maybe myself, one day could actually go. How could you turn away from something so exciting as the thought that there are places to explore that no one has ever gone before, and it might happen in my lifetime?
To most, Ryan's ambitions may seem uninviting. Mars is a cold and unwelcoming planet. With a much thinner atmosphere to the Earth, Mars is exposed to harsh radiation from the Sun, and temperatures can reach lows of minus 120 degrees. But the concept of one day humans being able to live more comfortably on Mars is not as far-fetched as once imagined, and ideas are being developed on how this could be made possible.
One of the really fascinating aspects about Mars that we've learned about is that the Mars that we see today doesn't reflect how it used to be many billions of years ago. In fact, if you go back about 4 billion years ago, there would have been oceans of liquid water on Mars. The atmosphere was much thicker, so you would have been able to walk out on the surface without wearing a big bulky spacesuit. You still wouldn't have been able to breathe the air. There wasn't much oxygen, we don't believe, on Mars back then. But it's fascinating to think about if Mars once was a potentially habitable planet, whether we could turn back the clock, if you will, and make Mars a more hospitable planet in the future, which is a process that we call terraforming, literally making an Earth. There are a number of ideas for how you could try and warm up Mars, ranging from somewhat crazy ideas to simpler ideas that would just take longer. So some ideas that I've seen is you could actually have mirrors floating in orbit around Mars that focus light from the sun onto the poles. You'd actually only need to warm up the ice caps of Mars by about 2 degrees Celsius to kickstart a runaway greenhouse effect, where all of the carbon dioxide that melts then warms up the atmosphere, traps in more light, that then melts even more of it, and then you see it's only a small kick that you have to give to Mars to start this process.
Another key aspect of this trip is the question of life. Although the prospect of discovering a colony of green life forms on the surface of Mars seems unlikely, NASA's recent observations show dark streaks that appear to flow downhill along the landscape of Mars. These markings of moisture and salt provide strong evidence of water intermittently flowing below the surface of Mars today.
Water is a key component to life as we know it, and this gives strong suggestions that there is, or once was, life on Mars.
If humans are given the opportunity to go to Mars, we could perhaps make discoveries that could answer age-old questions, not only about the existence of life on other planets, but the beginning of life here on Earth.
If we can find evidence of life on Mars, that could tell us so much more about our own origins. Because when Mars was a habitable planet, the Earth actually wasn't that nice a place to live on back then. The Earth only became habitable slightly after that. So it could be the case that life started on Mars first, and then via an asteroid impact, some material was transported from Mars to the Earth in order to bring that Martian life to the Earth, we could find out that we're all Martians, for instance. Or maybe we could find out that life on Mars is entirely distinct. It had a different genesis. And if two next-door neighbour planets had life starting independently, that potentially tells us that life is easy to start, and that therefore the entire universe will be flourishing with life. These are the kind of scientific questions that we can get a handle on, but only by sending trained scientists to Mars to conduct this research.
As a scientist, Ryan is in a long tradition of men and women who have gone to great lengths to help us understand more about our world and the universe. But in one important respect, Ryan's journey will be quite unique.
Mars One is a one-way mission. The people that choose to go with Mars One will be going there to establish a permanently staffed outpost on the Red Planet, not intending to ever return.
To do a one-way trip will be significantly cheaper and physically more achievable, without having a second rocket to bring astronauts back and half as much fuel. Making a one-way trip seems to be a more feasible and cost-effective way of reaching this goal. But although in terms of money prices may be lower, other costs are much higher.
I met Ryan originally online, and we'd exchanged maybe half a dozen messages before I mentioned that I was going to be in Cambridge anyways, to which he replied, "We could meet up and I could show you Stephen Hawking's office." We talked for hours about all sorts of things, including all sorts of things that you are not supposed to discuss on a first date. We got along really well. We saw the world in similar ways. We thought in similar ways. If Ryan went to Mars, I think what I'd miss most would be the little things. You know, being able to hug or kiss or cuddle, being able to go and do exciting adventures together. The interesting conversations and the emotional connection and the, inventing crazy ideas and discussing everything under the sun wouldn't necessarily end. But some of the things that involve us needing to be in the same place obviously would.
Leaving family and friends is just one of the difficulties faced by the Mars One mission. But the psychological ramifications of being 200 million miles away on an alien, uninhabitable planet are unparalleled to anything experienced by someone before. And you can never be certain of these implications until they've gone.
If we based all our decisions in life on, oh well, I don't know how this will make me feel, fear of the unknown, then we would never accomplish anything as individuals and we would never accomplish anything as a species. The technological spin-offs of the moon landing, things like integrated circuits which went into computers, mobile phones and eventually the internet, led to this huge surge in innovation that we've seen over the last 40 and 50 years. It's my fervent belief that those young people that watched the Mars landings will grow up to tackle the huge problems that we'll face here on the Earth in the 21st century.
Ryan loves to talk about science, to talk with kids, to talk with the next generation of scientists, of engineers. He wants to get them excited about space, about rockets, about Mars, about, all of these fields that have changed our world and will continue to change our world. When it goes ahead, will be 20 years from now. In 20 years from now, exactly one of the following will be true. Ryan and I will not be in a relationship, or Ryan and I will be in a relationship. If the former, it's none of my business. If the latter, presumably, if we are in a relationship at that point, we will have spent 20 years in a mutually satisfying, emotionally healthy, caring relationship. I think many people would count themselves very fortunate to experience that. I would never want to stand in the way of Ryan's dreams or Ryan's goals. If he goes to Mars, he goes to Mars. And I will miss him, but I would never want to stop him from going.
When we see the surface of Mars through the eyes of a robot, that is a very different feeling and perspective to seeing, for instance, the surface of the moon and seeing an astronaut walking over that surface. That stirs something very deep and profound within us. It's this ancient human sense of exploring the unknown, going where no one has gone before. And that is something that you can't put a price on, because that inspires children, it inspires young people, it makes our lives so much more exciting and so much more rewarding. It makes us look forward to a wonderfully bright future and dream of what we might be able to do in that future.